the fear level, the fear works in a way that's like you always think it's going to be way worse than it is. Ah, and it's like it's 8 p.m. 8 a.m. and I just like okay beep beep, and then I just draw from drawing 1 to like 1,000. Doesn't work like that.
Fight.
I think the fear kind of comes into when you get to when you as you get older and stuff, you realize how valuable time is, right? So um, let's say you get hired on a movie and you're going to work on it for 5 years or something, right? But I think as you get older, those 5 years become much more valuable, and you're like, I don't want to really. Do I want to invest my time into this 5 years? Do I want to, you know, do I want to do something else? And some of my older friends, uh, what's going to be like? I'm going to retire at some point in the next 10 years or something. They'll say this, right? And they'll be like, what does that mean? Like, how do I end my career? Like, how do I think, you know, a lot of those things end up being kind of fear based, I guess, because they're in the back of your head and they have to do with mortality and how you're going to face kind of like your end, or like a decline in what you can do and what you can work on and stuff like that. The minute you figure everything out, the minute you like are good at like all this stuff and you can like do all these things, then your body and your mind start deteriorating, I feel. And it's just like, so now you have
That's
to do
mean.
is
Like, what
it?
a cruel trick.
No, I totally right. And so there's also this kind of ancient philosophy of from the ancient Greeks talking about uh, what is happiness, who is happy, and it's like uh, all your happiness can be taken away at any moment, and it's very dangerous and it's scary, right? And so the idea in this like ancient Greek kind of like idea from this guy named Solon was that you're only happy, you can only count someone as happy after they're dead, because they uh, when you go, I know this gets very morbid, right? Sorry, but
That's fine. When I
yeah.
was 13, I did a thing on how we're all gonna die anyway, so it's alright.
See, there you go. Well, it's true, right? I mean, but like, what's like that makes living valuable, right? So like, you always have to kind of look at things on the other side of it. So this morning, I usually get up kind of early, but this morning I stayed in bed and I read, a little bit and hung out, and that's like extreme privilege and happiness for me. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh, I can do this. This is great. It's a Saturday morning, so I think,
And then I
you
had to
know,
interrupt with an interview.
exactly,
I
and then
actually
you
I had to
messed the
ask my
entire thing up.
parents. I had to
Oh,
ask my parents if adults wake up at 9:30 in the morning on a Saturday, because I didn't know.
what did they say? They were like, if there's like a coherent human being, he will. Now, who knows? Yeah, some people like to sleep until noon. But anyways, the idea is that about the happiness and fear is that like uh, uh, it's a mix. I'm always trying to figure it out. Like I'm Sisyphus. I'm pushing the rock. Um, in the grand scheme of things, will I put a dent in the universe? Will I not? If I um, a lot of those, I feel like a lot of those people that are like really hell bent on that, it's like even if they put a dent in the universe, they wouldn't be satisfied. And so it's kind of like a magical balance of like being present, being happy with like what you have and stuff, and then at the same time kind of like looking towards the future and being okay with it, but kind of like trying to manipulate it in the way that you want it to be, right? So like,
Yeah.
who knows, you're gonna get sick. Uh, you know, might, like something bad will happen, something good will happen. But usually, you have to kind of like go into those elements at the end, preparing for like a little bit of grace and where you are. And did I direct the most critically acclaimed film in the world, or did I write the next like the great American novel or things like that? You know, No, but I think in some ways that's okay. You just have to be you'll be okay with it, And so I think there's fear about wrestling with that. I'll never be good enough. I'm a failure at life. I didn't get what I wanted to get done, but you also have to look at the other aspects of, well, worked in storyboards and I was super lucky to work at Pixar. That's awesome and be part of these movies. And so, you just have to like look at these things. It's like we were talking about where it's like, okay, once I get this job, everything will be fine. But the minute you get there is now like you're here and the grass is greener and there's always an aspect of like where to grow, where to go next. And I think that like that is helpful, but also extremely confusing and can be very fear inducing.
That's very interesting to hear another person's perspective on that. It takes I think it takes 4 generations or 5 if you're like famous for you to be like completely forgotten. Or at least that's my theory, because from what I've observed in my very long years of living.
Yeah, excellent.
But it's very interesting to hear other people's mindsets on that, because I don't know, legacy is something I think a lot of people think about, and definitely like is a theme personally in my life. So it's very interesting to hear that.
Yeah, like uh, you know Abraham Lincoln. You go to he's a legend, right? He's like this like legendary character, and he wasn't that long ago. But he was a real person. He was probably a human being just like everyone else, and he had problems, and he had good things and bad things, and he had worries and he had fears and everything like that. But yeah, like you're saying, like that's interesting because like a couple generations later, we got Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer.
Wow, yeah, the crowning achievement. What would you say to someone who struggles with fear in art?
Uh, uh, Give it some. Just get your hands dirty. Just dig around in there and have fun and find what you would like to do, because the fear level, the fear works in a way that's like you always think it's going to be way worse than it is, and
That's true.
yeah, it's almost always like that. And so just kind of get in there, and also you can't maintain, like if you're like at a fear level of like 10, you can't like maintain like that level for very long. So when you get in there and you start digging around and just like getting yourself familiar with what you're working on, and just kind of like keep digging around at it, your fear level is going to go down.
What do you think is a common myth that like students or like young artists have about working in the animation industry?
uh that people don't struggle, that people know exactly what they're going to do at any given time. you know uh there's kind of like a mythology around that when you look at Disneyland, or when you look at like stories about Pixar, right? Like there's always these great stories, but like the things like uh that those people figured those things out right away. It wasn't the case. They worked at it, and they had really shitty days, or sorry, crappy days, and but they had really, they had not great days, and they had like struggled, didn't know what to do, avoided work like we all do, and called in sick or tried to do anything else, cleaned their entire house. But I think when you're done, you go through it all, then you kind of like can like you can manipulate the shape of that story a little bit to make it seem like a little bit um you know yeah there was always a story, I think it was like that came out of like maybe the teaser for Wall-E or something like that, and it was like one day everyone, once upon a time, all the 4 directors got together and they had a lunch, and they just thought of cool ideas, and they drew all their ideas on paper napkins in that one lunch, and you know they made Toy Story and Finding Nemo and Wall-E and every other top hit that you've ever thought of, right? And there's that kind of like feeling, but it doesn't those guys worked hard and they worked their butts off, and they created those things. It wasn't like a willy-nilly lunch of like insane genius where they just, if they did, it's because they were working on that stuff for years and thinking about it, writing about it, drawing it, and talking about it, and looking at different ways to think about it. But like they did the work, and so I think the myth is that there's like I sit down and I and it's like, it's 8 a.m. and I just like, okay, beep beep, and then I just draw from drawing 1 to like 1,000. Doesn't work like that. It's like, it's very much like, I'm gonna start with drawing. A lot of story artists always ask, how many drawings do you have to do a day? And again, it's creative, so it's a hard question to ask, and I used to ask that question all the time. How many drawings do you have to do a day? Like, and it's it's like a poisonous question. It doesn't really mean anything, simply because some days you'll go in and you'll work really hard on something and you got like 20 good drawings out of it, and then the next day you'll go in and you'll have 200 drawings. So there's no like, even out. I guess in the grand scheme of things, I would say that you should probably do like like a page a day is kind of like what people say for storyboards, and that gives you kind of like a level of like, okay, I should keep this loose and simple, because it's storyboards. You're just planning things out. So I think that kind of like those mythos kind of like feed into that, where there's like a certain level of this and that, but the job isn't like that. It's very much it's creative, which is great, but also at the same time all the aspects of that are weird, of like doubt, and I spent this whole day just walking around in circles and draw a darn thing, but I thought about the thing the whole day, or I had to go. Just went to the park and I ate lunch out in the park and hung out with some friends and just talked about it a little bit, or I watched a bunch of movies, and then, or it's like, oh, this day, yeah, I just drew 300 drawings. It was crazy, so the job is like kind of like erratic, but that's why I'm saying like it's important to like hold on to that center. So I think there's a lot of kind of like, I think people have a cartoony aspect of what the job is when they come into the industry, but it's just people like everything else.
That's a really good answer. That's very insightful. We're coming up on the end of the interview. We're almost here. Yeah.
Oh wow! All right.
All right. What do you wish you were taught about, like, the industry or working, or I know you've like led a team before, in general? Like, what do you wish somebody like gave you a heads up?
I probably just kind of like what we were just talking about, which is the idea of like, you think that as importance of decisions go up the ladder, that people will have they're just human beings. Everyone's a human being. It's crazy, and it's just no one's like a demigod or anything like that. They're all people, just like you and me, and so those aspects of that are hard to remember when you're removed, but it's good to think about it when you are getting, like, when you really kind of like think about it and you give people the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of problems can be solved by looking at things and it's this person got caught stealing, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this might be a bad example, but like the idea of like just kind of like look at all aspects of it before you kind of start making judgments. And I think when I was, when you're younger, you think about those things, like you think of a cartoony aspect of how people would work at these places, and it's just not the truth. Like, there's just people like everyone else. Like, they have better days and good days and bad days, and good decisions and bad decisions, and irrational, lame, emotional choices and logical, good ones, and but that kind of stuff, and you just kind of like have to take it all with a grain of salt. Also, just that things, once you get there, like who knows, it might not work out for you. Like you don't want, I definitely do feel like people get in the trap of being like, but I want to work at Pixar. I want to work at Pixar. But
Mhm.
like when I look at the stuff that they draw or they're making, I'm like, but this isn't what Pixar does. Like, but so why do you want to work at Pixar? Because this isn't what they do. Like, if you want to do this, this looks like cool art for like Mass Effect or like a science fiction like video game. You should go work at um, like maybe like work on Halo or work on Mass Effect or something like that. You should go work there because like if you want to draw, if you come here and you show me a portfolio and it's a whole portfolio of Space Marines, with guns and various like outfits like that, I'm like, dude, just go work at you know uh, uh, work at these like places that will allow you to thrive a little bit better in the world that you want to what that you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same way. Like, I went to Cal Arts to study for a summer animation
Yeah,
program, and I
yeah,
found out that I didn't like art school. Like, it was a
yeah,
great, fantastic experience. Teachers were
yeah,
great, and people were amazing.
yeah.
But from that like shocked my entire world because from the age of 12, I was just working to get into CalArts, but suddenly that was gone. But I'm
Wow.
very happy that that's gone. I don't want to
Yeah.
go to CalArts. It's great, but I'm much more happy doing stuff like this, like interviewing people like you and making my own stuff and not being bound by anyone else's rules, which, like how
Right.
you say,
Right.
life just leads you in different directions, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine. I think there's some level of people will your ego has a hard time with the idea of like I aimed for this one thing and I told everyone that I wanted it, and then when I got it I didn't want it, and it's like that's fine. You made a mistake. No one cares. The only one is like, why are you punishing yourself by trying to live with this mistake? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. The last question I wanted to ask you, we
Yeah.
made it.
Yeah.
The last question I wanted to ask you is what is something that you thought was scary or like terrifying, but you were able to overcome or get through?
Oh gosh. There's so many aspects of that.
Yeah, take all the time you need to think. It's totally fine.
Gosh, wow, jeez. Emotionally exhausting question. Huh. Yeah, but I think when you have like relationships with people and they're not working out, and so you have to like choose your kind of own path and what you're going to do. That can be pretty painful, especially when you've made some choices that uh, in your mind, you really wanted something to work, and it's not. Maybe it's not going to work anymore, and so those things end up being really scary. And but when you make the choice, which seems at the time daunting and a lot of work to, once you make the choice to kind of like right the situation for yourself, it does feel like a lot better. A tremendous amount of like relief can come out of that. So I think living with something hanging over your head is just really difficult and can hurt you in a lot of different ways, physically, mentally. So I think don't be like I look at that and I go, okay, well that fear like made you like afraid to change, but once you were able to change and adapt, it was better. So I think sometimes I think in that case, like it was just a matter of I had to like do a larger change to my life, and then I was able to uh, uh, kind of like get over that overwhelming fear because I had to do a pretty big like kind of more drastic change.
Do you wish that thing never happened?
No, no, it has to happen. I'm glad in a lot of ways that those things happen because when you come through the other end, you're just left with yourself. And now you know a little bit more about yourself because you that's what's left is you, essentially. And so some things that you thought were aspects of yourself are not really aspects of yourself, I think.
Do you have an example of that? Or you don't have to say if you can.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a light, simple one. But I, and more along the lines of like, once you, let's see, like, I was a smoker, and then and I used to smoke, and then I moved to San Francisco from Southern California, and I thought that I would, I'll give it up and I'll do these things and everything will be different. I'll see myself in my mind as like a different person. But I did end up bringing that with me. And I just remember a friend saying like, oh, well, wherever you go, you bring yourself with you. And that's what that means, is that like, what aspects are still kind of like you. And I guess that's a bad example because I have quit smoking a long time ago. But
That's
in
good.
that,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. But in the grand scheme of things, and it was so long ago that it kind of feels like a weird, distant memory. But I don't think that there are going to be some things that aren't like an end all be all. Like you're going to like come through the end, and there's still going to be aspects of you that didn't change. And you'll come out of those. You'll like, it's like whatever sticks to you, whatever sticks in your, that's what makes you like, you're made up of that thing, of those things. So I guess I'm rambling here a bit, but the idea would be that you go through these changes, and something that you thought was really core to you forever, like let's say drawing. But I do know people that are just like, I don't feel like I want to draw anymore. And like, dude, you're like the best draftsman I've ever seen. Like, you don't want to draw? No, not really. And it's like, yeah, man, like that's, maybe drawing will no longer be part of your life. I'm sure a lot of artists will hear that and be like, I can't imagine that. But yeah, well, shoot, I think, live for 30 years and see what happens. Cause like life is crazy. So you might be like, I'm really into accounting, and what, but it happens. So I think those things kind of like move around, but yeah, I guess like those, you feel like those things are like embedded into your being, but they still are like kind of like a bit flexible. And kind of like the elements that you're saying, like, do you regret going through those bad things? No, because once you go through those things, you kind of see what like comes out in the wash. And a lot of times it's something that you thought like, oh, I thought I was going to be in this relationship forever. Turns out it's not going to happen. And because you've based so much of your kind of like personality and your whole outlook on your own life in that situation, and it changes, yeah, it can be a little like distressing.
Yeah, definitely. That's very good advice. That reminds me of, I made a video about I did an anti-sketchbook going against all of the advice that all these art teachers gave me.
Excellent.
And it ended up being like the best thing. It was awesome. It was great. I took a break from art and it was very fun. But yeah, that's
awesome.
fantastic.
Bye.